Okay, in terms of relating to the assignment, this is the last major chunk. It relates to the final section of the assignment. How do you measure the success of this new service that you have specified, having sort of taken an existing service and critiqued it, demonstrated its flaws, and then suggested a new set of approaches which will hopefully provide something better for students. So we're looking at measuring the success of IT. So what we need to think about are these 4 questions, and I expect to see these 4 questions and answers being provided in that final section of the assignment. It's to look at who are the key people who are affected, the stakeholders. What are they really trying to get out of this revised service or this improved service that you're doing? And then looking at how do we go about measuring the success of a particular service for each of the key stakeholders that you're interested in. What are those measures, and then how do we go about actually getting some answers, the measures themselves? So, stakeholders. Now, as you remember, the stakeholders are the people who are affected by a particular thing or a service. And if you think about what some of the areas that you might well be looking at, we've got the IT services people in the university who actually provide many of these things in an IT sense. So they're the providers. You've got students, that's you guys and your colleagues who are the users. Some of you might be looking at improving the way that you can interact with the library systems. We've got the bus company and the trains people who are providing data that comes up on those TV screens in the atrium. And maybe also some of the timetables are actually in the student app. There's people who host the systems. And if you're thinking about your email system or Office 365, which is what you also get free access to, who's a cloud hosting organization, the provider, which in that sense is actually Microsoft. If you're looking at timetabling and interacting with a timetable more effectively, well, academic staff have quite a finger in the pie because we're the people who actually allocate you into your tutorial and workshop groups or seminar groups as well. There's people downstairs, the student services, who may get involved in doing some of the things, like your payments and so on the new UDO page in self-service. They're involved in making sure you can see that your fees are paid properly and so on. The student union are your representatives here at a sort of high level. There are guys out there who actually run all of those halls of residence and people who rent out their houses and so on. And of course, if you've got the app, if you're critiquing the app, well, there's a company out there who actually created it for the University of Derby. So lots of potential different stakeholders, and you may come up with 1 or 2 more as you look at your particular service. So these are sort of people I would expect to see in the who are the stakeholders who need to be reassured or need to be talked to in terms of finding out, is it successful? So, okay, so that was a list of the stakeholders. What sort of interests might we have, or they have? And I've got various slides that suggest some of the topics that each of the stakeholders might be interested in. So the IT services here, who provide many of those services for us, have a whole range of interesting kind of thoughts that they would like to see considered as a successful service. How available is it? Is it up 24/7? What's the failure rate? They want to think about things like reliability. They might be interested in terms like, was the project delivered on time, to budget? Did it deliver all of the expected or contracted for functionality as per the standards group reporting? How many people are actually using these new Wizzo things that they're providing? How many downloads of the university app actually have taken place over the last however long? How many installations were downloaded immediately after implementation? But not just the downloads, because we all know that we've got lots of apps on our smart devices which we've downloaded, tried once, and then just left on the thing, we've not deleted them yet. So what's the actual level of usage? Because that is probably the more useful measure of success. 10% of the students using it, 50% of the students using it, 100% of students using it. What is your measure? What is it you want to see out of it? What were the targets you had when you actually launched the project? As an IT service provider, go look at ITIL, for example. Now, what's the feedback? What are the level of requests for change? Are people satisfied with it? But you might also need to think about the reliability of the feedback. And this links into something we'll cover next year, or the year after, at least in your third year, when we look at sustainable information corporate governance, about the reliability or veracity, truthfulness of all of this text data that comes through the social networks in terms of your survey feedback. How reliable actually are the comments? And yes, some of those angry tweets are likely to be pretty valid. The problem is it only the angry, upset people who are tweeting? What about the 95% of the rest of the population who don't make any comment? Are they angry? Are they upset? Or are they just quite happy and you're not getting any feedback from them? That's one of the problems of this sort of thing, that often it's only those who are upset who will actually provide any input. And the service providers might also want to think about the service level agreements and management of it, particularly if it's outsourced. So the whole service level agreement becomes quite interesting as an exercise if you've got other people out there providing services for your own customers, your internal customers. Have they met their service level agreement? Have they given the right levels of uptime? Are they responding to problems as quickly as they have committed to? So there's all sorts of different factors you might want to include there as part of your success measures. Thinking about you guys, well, if it's the app or the UDO web page, is the data, the information that's being presented to you, up to date? Or is it very, very old? And no one's got round to changing some of those announcements that keep flashing up about events. Is it easy to use? Are the interface, the human-computer interface standards, compliant with various pieces of legislation and also the recommended activities, things like the W3C compliance in terms of HTML accuracy and all those other things that are there, and Disability Act type of requirements, so that people can use screen readers to understand what the links are. And if you're using Flash, you know for certain you are not DDA compliant, period, because there's no way of a screen reader working with Flash under most circumstances. And again, from your perspective as students, does the thing do what it's supposed to do? You might think about how often do I actually use it? And that was what I was talking about just now, about that little section, that tile on the top left-hand side of the UDO, where most of the things at the top end of that list are things you use once in your career or twice a year. Kind of not a very helpful place to be. Where can it be used? We're now going back here to the technology acceptance model and UTA-UT. Why am I using it? Why should I use it? Does it help me? And you can pick up all of those UTA-UT criteria. Just remember, at all times, you need to provide citations to support each of these factors and where you found them. You can't just dream them up out of your head and put them in there. If you think about the library or other parts of this university, who are trying to provide services to you, you need to think about workload impact. Can the department support what you need? So if you're thinking about that timetabling, is the impact, where is the impact going to be? Is it going to be in timetabling, or is it going to be the academics who do the allocation of you guys into tutorial groups and are receptive to your requirements to move from one tutorial group to another tutorial group for personal reasons or whatever? Do we get any savings, any efficiency, reduction in number of people, man hours, whatever? Does it make us actually operate more effectively? Lots and lots and lots of questions. And the bus and the train company in relation to timetables, again, the same sort of questions we just had in terms of the library. But here we're going even worse. We're going outside the university to somebody else's system to trying to suck data out of there and trying to keep it up to date. If we're using a cloud environment, like with the Unimail, questions like security, the resilience to numbers of users, loads and resources. Can they guarantee that you will always get great response times? What's the service level agreement and how should it be managed? And then connecting to those regulations in terms of security, IT law, standards. And it's actually part of this, which is why Unimail is hosted by Microsoft out of their cloud center in Southern Ireland, because they could guarantee that all of the information in your account, all of your emails in and out, would be in the servers in Southern Ireland, within the European Union data protection zone. Whereas back then, several years ago, other providers of competing email systems couldn't guarantee that all of your information would be kept on one server, would be sprayed around the world across different servers, and therefore would be non-compliant with the data protection regime. And then if you think about us, the academics, we are both providers of information for you, and we use quite a lot of information as well. Same sorts of questions. In fact, those are very, very similar to the ones that apply to the students as stakeholders. And again, student service, the guys downstairs who look after all your records, answer all your questions about studying and everything else. Same sort of sets of questions there, as will be for the student union. And for the student accommodation providers, again, all very, very similar sorts of questions. And then, if we have an app doing something special for you guys, which can go on a smart device or even on a part of a PC type of environment, here's a different sort of set of questions. What are the reviews like? Because if it's an external organisation, a lot of you guys, a lot of students are going to get out there on the blogs and they're going to get out there on the review websites talking about their experiences. Mostly those who are unhappy by the very nature of things. Many, many more people who are unhappy will go online than those who are satisfied. Numbers of downloads, numbers of users, service level agreements. The reliability and robustness of the app. Is it really actually up to scratch? How often does it need updating? How often will you be able to go through the different app stores to publish those new updates? Security is obviously a critical issue, particularly with a lot of that personal data which may be required for some of these different bits. So what we now need to think about, having looked at what is it that all that range of stakeholders are kind of interested in. Those are all sorts of questions that you may well need to get answers to, depending on the type of new service that you're providing. Well, obviously there's a success-failure sort of metric. Was it on time to budget with all the functionality that was needed? A successful project, one of those 30-odd%, 35% of successful projects? Or is it one that's going to be a bit late over budget and only delivers part of what it's supposed to do? I mean, it's going to be important from a variety of perspectives. What's the level of uptake? How many people actually are using it out of the possible community who should be using, who are the target? How much are they using it? So, you know, you think about, because that usage level sometimes is going to be quite important in deciding what to put at the top of a list of options. Particularly if the list is can only display half of it at a time, and the next half of it is on the next page, which means another click. So, you know, whoever is the main owner of this service will want to understand these sort of questions. How many people are using it? How often they're using it? Is it really reliable? Does it fail regularly? Does it do the job properly? And does it actually help people to be more efficient? That means do things quicker, less effort, less cost, less resource. So, some more questions you need to be thinking about in that final chapter. You might also be thinking about some of those technology acceptance models and the UTA-UT type of factors that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And they can give you quite a large number of extra interesting questions that you can actually measure some answers to in different ways. You might also like to use the Zachman Enterprise Architecture Framework, the 6 questions, the who, why, what, where, how, when, or the alternative versions in the architectural terms. They can also provide you, in the previous section of your assignment, with some ways of looking at the governance of the whole project. So, moving on swiftly, those are the measures. How do we go about actually getting values for? How do we measure the factors to get some useful answers which we can then use to get a whole set of data which we can then go to the various stakeholders and say, yeah, the project was really successful on cost grounds, it was on time, it delivered everything that it should have done, the students are using it at this sort of level, this is about 60-70% of students are using it all the time, therefore it's a great success. The students are saying, we like it, it does the job, or not, as the case may be. So the last 2 or 3 slides just give us a few ideas. Oops, sorry, wrong way. The project manager should have the data about on time to budget and functionality. So that's where that should come from, and you should know that at all time, always. Operationally, if it's an app, what's the downloads? You can actually go to the app stores and find out how many copies have been downloaded. You could also go via social networks perhaps and find some data through there. Get the reviews, see what people are saying there. You could do surveys, go talk to students, go talk to and interview and questionnaires out to students and all the other stakeholders. And often you can go into the operational systems to find out number of page views, how long people stayed on a page, and all sorts of data like that. Or if it's more of a server-based system, well, there's lots and lots of data there. You could potentially look at firewall logs if you wanted to, being very careful to select the right data and then anonymize it. And then you could use some of the technology acceptance models and UTA-UT factors relating to different stakeholders. Again, surveys, questionnaires, and maybe crowdsourced data. Which of course raises some fun questions about, you know, how much do we trust stuff that's crowdsourced? Is the crowd actually always correct? And there's a couple of posters which you may have seen on my door which suggest actually some of the time crowdsourcing is not terribly accurate. Sometimes for sentiment it might be, but remember the proportion who will report their happiness is much smaller than the proportion who will report their unhappiness. So that's a really quick whip through of the sort of factors I expect to see in that last section of your assignment that really gets to grips with, okay, we've just critiqued a service, we've defined a new service, and here is the way we will measure its success. So you've now got, from all of the pieces of, or all the weekly lectures or seminar material, you've got all of the clues to what is expected to be in the different parts of your assignment. So now you've got that, you can now start thinking about carrying on with your assignment and asking questions after we finish this bit, and I'll come and talk to you, solve any problems for you, hopefully. Or just give advice.